Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a genuinely bizarre biological mystery. We're going to look at this wild mechanical connection between your body and your brain. We're exploring how just moving around might literally be washing your mind.
So think about this. Does your brain move when you flex your abs? For the longest time, we've just assumed the central nervous system is completely isolated, right? Just locked away safely inside this thick, bony skull, totally protected from the pushes and pulls of the rest of the body. But what if I told you that something as simple as tensing your stomach muscles actually physically shifts your brain around inside your head? Crazy, right?
Well, this mind-bending concept comes straight from a recent study published in Nature Neuroscience. Scientists found that our central nervous system actually feels physical forces from the rest of the body. Lead researcher Patrick Drew over at Penn State sums it up perfectly. He says our research explains how just moving around might serve as an important physiological mechanism promoting brain health.
Here's how we're going to break it down today. First, the hidden brain connection. Second, the body's hydraulic pump. Third, measuring microscopic brain movement. Fourth, washing the dirty sponge. And finally, why everyday movement matters.
Starting off with Section 1, the hidden brain connection.
Because the central nervous system is encased in thick bone, it really does look like a sealed vault. But scientists already knew it wasn't a totally static environment. Past studies on cerebrospinal fluid showed that sleep and even neuron loss can change how fluid flushes through the brain. Knowing that, researchers decided to see if physical movement from the body's core was also directly linked to what's happening up in the skull.
All right, Section 2, the body's hydraulic pump.
To actually see this physical connection between the stomach and the head, scientists had to map out the body's hidden plumbing. They injected a special dye into mice and used microcomputed tomography, which basically gives these incredibly high-resolution 3D images of whole organs. What they found is a structure called the vertebral venous plexus. It's this specialized network of blood vessels connecting the abdominal cavity directly to the spinal cavity. It's literally a hidden fluid superhighway.
And here is exactly how this biological hydraulic pump works. First, your abdominal muscles contract. When they do, step 2, they squeeze blood out of your belly and push it into that vertebral venous plexus. Then, step 3, that extra volume inside the spine pushes fluid upwards. Finally, step 4, that upward surge creates a literal pressure wave that travels all the way up and physically shifts the brain. It's basically a hydraulic pump that fires off whenever you do something as basic as bracing yourself to take a step.
Moving on to Section 3, measuring microscopic brain movement.
So how do you actually measure invisible forces inside living tissue? The researchers came up with an absolutely brilliant experiment. They put 24 awake mice on a spherical treadmill. They temporarily secured the mice's heads in place and surgically placed a tiny transparent window into their thin skulls. Then, using 2-photon microscopy, which lets you take super high-def video of living tissue, they tracked glowing microscopic beads on the skull against cells in the brain tissue at 40 frames per second. This let them see those exact microscopic shifts.
The results were pretty mind-blowing. Spikes in abdominal muscle activity perfectly predicted exactly when the brain was going to move. But here's the real kicker. The brain shifted just moments before the mice even moved their legs. It shifted right when the abdominal muscles tighten up to prepare for the movement. This proves that it's the core muscles acting as the primary pump for the brain, not the act of running itself.
Just to be absolutely sure this was happening, they did one more test. They put a custom pneumatic belt around the abdomens of lightly anesthetized mice to apply a really gentle pressure. We're talking less pressure than a standard blood pressure cuff. And guess what? Without the mice moving at all, their brains shifted. And as soon as the pressure was released, the brain instantly returned to baseline. This completely confirmed that mechanical link, no doubt about it.
Section 4, washing the dirty sponge.
Now, the fluid dynamics happening inside the skull are ridiculously complex, so the computational modeling team simplified the brain's geometry. They modeled how fluid flows through varied spaces and wrinkles by essentially treating the brain like a sponge. Researcher Francesco Costanzo had a great way of putting it. He said, keeping with the idea of the brain as a sponge, we also thought of it as a dirty sponge. How do you clean a dirty sponge? You run it under a tap and squeeze it out.
This highlights such a cool physiological process by comparing two totally different states of brain health. Look at sleep. During sleep, fluid washes deeply into the brain to help clear out cellular waste. But during movement or exercise, that sudden physical shift from an abdominal contraction forces interstitial fluid, which is the liquid sitting in the microscopic spaces around your cells, out of the brain tissue. So you have this inward wash during sleep and an outward squeeze during exercise that clears liquid right out of those tiny spaces.
Finally, Section 5. Why everyday movement matters.
Now, to be totally impartial, we have to acknowledge the study's limitations before getting to our big takeaway. First off, the mouse heads were kept perfectly still. Obviously, freely moving animals have extra physical forces going on from moving their heads up and down. Also, the researchers only imaged the top portion of the cortex, meaning deeper parts of the brain might stretch differently. And of course, the computer models use simplified geometry, which might not perfectly match how fluids flow through a real, highly intricate nervous system.
But even with those limitations, the core discovery is absolutely massive. Tiny motions, just walking or contracting your abs, physically help cycle cerebral spinal fluid in and around the brain. This movement helps clear out cellular waste, and scientists think it could actually protect against neurodegenerative disorders that are caused by waste building up in the brain. So everyday movement is quite literally an internal cleaning mechanism for your mind. A little bit of motion really does go a very long way.
And that brings us to our final thought. If something as simple as taking a step or just tensing your core acts as a biological hydraulic pump to wash away cellular waste, how are you going to move today to keep your mind clear? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope this leaves you thinking a little differently about the hidden mechanical connections going on right now inside your own body.